will take.
You having fun?
Why don't you do yourself a favor, boy?
I said get lost.
The film begins near New Orleans, where a man is desperately fleeing from a group of armed pursuers. Among them is a particularly determined hunter armed with a sophisticated crossbow, clearly eager to be the one to kill the fleeing man. The man races toward a river and sprints across a wooden dock, but is struck by 2 bolts from the crossbow, one of which pierces his chest and shatters his military dog tags. He collapses, falling through the gaps in the dock and into the water below. His body is soon retrieved from the river, and one of the hunters, Pick Van Cleef, strips a money belt from the corpse. Their leader, Emile Fauchin, turns to the crossbowman and asks if the experience matched his expectations. The man affirms that it did. Shortly afterward, Natasha Nat Binder arrives in New Orleans from Detroit in search of her father, the man just killed in the hunt. Her father, a former U.S. Army veteran and out-of-work laborer, had been living on the streets. Nat starts her search by checking local missions and soup kitchens but turns up no leads. Eventually, she heads into the French Quarter and stops at a rundown diner for a meal. When she pays for her food, she carelessly reveals a stash of cash in her wallet, an act that catches the attention of some rough-looking men nearby. As she heads back to her car, the men ambush her, intending to rob and assault her right there in public. Luckily, a stranger from the diner intervenes. His name is Chance Boudreaux, and he easily dispatches the attackers with impressive hand-to-hand combat skills. He advises Nat to be more cautious while in New Orleans. When Nat asks him to help her look for her father, he declines, explaining that he's a dock worker and is scheduled to leave soon aboard a cargo ship. Later at the docks, Chance is informed that he cannot return to work until he pays overdue union dues. Nat appears again and offers to hire him to assist in the search, this time offering to cover the cost. Chance agrees to take the job. He proposes they speak with the police, but Nat is hesitant. She's already reported her father missing and feels the authorities have shown little interest in helping. Nonetheless, they visit homicide detective Marie Mitchell, who is investigating a burned-out warehouse where human remains, believed to be her father's, have been found. The assumption is that he had been squatting and died accidentally in the fire. Chance investigates the site himself and locates one of her father's dog tags, which has an unusual puncture hole. Before he can leave, he is confronted by 2 men who warn him to stop probing into Binder's death. Chance overpowers them, but is arrested for trespassing. He's brought before Mitchell and Nat, where he asserts that the death wasn't an accident. Binder was definitely struck by a sharp projectile, likely the bolt from a crossbow, given the damage to the dog tag. Elijah Roper, a fellow veteran and one of the few people who knew Nat's father from the homeless shelters, provides more insight. He explains that Binder had been handing out flyers for a shady brothel owner named Randall Poe. Unbeknownst to Binder, Poe was working with Fauchin and Pick, who operated an underground business that offered wealthy men the chance to hunt human beings for sport. For $500,000, clients could pursue homeless or desperate individuals across different regions of the world, New Orleans being their latest hunting ground. With the police now investigating Binder's death as a possible homicide, Fauchin and Pick confront Poe to find out what he's disclosed. They torture him, with Pick mutilating his ear using scissors, warning him of worse consequences if he speaks further. Chance later finds Poe getting a massage and roughs him up for more information. Poe eventually reveals that Fauchin has been having the city coroner, Morton, falsify reports to hide the murders. When Fauchin hears that Mitchell has ordered Binder's body re-examined, he visits Morton, who's already burning documents in his fireplace. Morton peers out his front door and is instantly shot by Pick. Fauchin tells Pick that since the police are closing in, it's time for one final hunt in New Orleans before relocating their operation to Eastern Europe, where they'll draw less attention. Poe, now fearing for his life, offers Roper a job, $10,000 for a mysterious task. Roper accepts, unaware he is to be the next human target. He meets with Fauchin and Pick at an abandoned rail yard, where he's handed the cash and a money belt and given a head start. The rules are simple: reach the river and he's free to keep the money. Like Binder before him, Roper is hunted through a graveyard and other urban terrain by the armed men. He briefly manages to hide and fight back, stealing a weapon and killing one of his pursuers before fleeing again. When his weapon runs dry, he makes a desperate escape attempt. Fauchen, displeased, kills the client who paid for the hunt, reasoning that he already has the money and no longer needs him. Roper reaches a public area and begs passers-by for help, but because he looks homeless, people ignore him. He is eventually cornered and killed by Fauchen's men, who retrieve the money belt. Chance and Nat meet again with Detective Mitchell and learn about Roper's disappearance. They go back to confront Poe, but Pick arrives first and executes Poe with a shotgun. Outside, Pick and several of Fauchen's men launch an attack. Mitchell is killed in the gunfire. Chance manages to knock out one of the assailants and steals his motorcycle, speeding away with Nat. As they race through the city, Pick gives chase. On an overpass, Chance drops Nat off for safety and doubles back on the motorcycle, leaping over a vehicle in pursuit and destroying it by firing into the fuel tank. He and Nat then leap off the overpass and land inside a cargo train. Fauchen, undeterred, decides to continue the hunt into the bayou and orders Pick to gather reinforcements. Chance and Nat journey through the swampy terrain. At one point, Chance saves Nat from a rattlesnake, biting off its rattle and rigging it as a trap. One of the hunters later triggers the trap and is bitten in the face. Fauchen and Pick are impressed, realizing that Boudreaux is a worthy opponent. The pair eventually reach the rural property of Chance's uncle Devay, deep in the bayou. Chance retrieves a shotgun he left with his uncle and tells him of his plan to lead the hunters to the Mardi Gras graveyard, an abandoned factory full of parade floats. He rides off alone, leaving Nat in Devay's care. When Fauchen's crew arrives, they trip another booby trap that causes a deadly explosion, killing several of the hunters. Devay sends Nat off to contact the authorities and then heads off to back up Chance. At the Mardi Gras graveyard, Chance leads Pick and the remaining hunters into the vast float storage warehouse. Using stealth in his environment, Chance picks off the men one by one. Eventually, he and Pick confront each other directly, ending with Chance killing Pick. Nat and Devay soon arrive and assist in neutralizing the remaining enemies. During the fight, Devay is injured but survives. Fauchen then takes Nat hostage and forces Chance to surrender his weapon. The two engage in a brutal hand-to-hand battle. Chance eventually uses a grenade, shoving it into Fauchen's pants. After a fierce struggle, Fauchen tries to disarm it, even pulling out the pin, but fails to neutralize it in time. The grenade explodes, in the aftermath, killing Chance. Nat and Devay reunite and walk away together, having survived the deadly ordeal.